Everybody, thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Thor, The Dark World. The Big Rob Theory is back for another video. It's been a while since we've done a collab together, but yeah, we've been working on this one for a while, and I should mention that obviously I'm taking another short break from my Halloween and horror related reviews for October. I mentioned in my first video from October that if there was any movie that I was already kind of working on as far as the collab with somebody else, that if I had the opportunity to do it in October, that I would go ahead and do that. So that's what's happening here. We're taking another short break. I'm doing terrible so far at my continuous horror or Halloween reviews for October, but there's plenty more reviews coming. I have a review coming very soon with Blacktastic Media for the 1932 The Mummy, so I'm very excited to do that. But for now, the Big Rob Theory will be speaking to us very shortly, but let's talk a little bit about this next film in the MCU that I have to review. So Thor The Dark World, or also known as just Thor 2, is a film that I think gets a really bad rap. I talked about it in my review for the first Thor that, you know, the Thor movies outside of Ragnarok just get a bad rap, and these movies just do not have a whole lot of love for them. And without a doubt, I think that this movie and the first Thor are definitely on the weaker side of the MCU. But the MCU is this huge thing at this point, and there's so many fantastic movies. And I think that sometimes when you have a more disappointing film like this, or something that's a little bit lesser than the other ones, it's viewed as bad. And I just think that this movie has way too much to offer to be considered just straight up bad. Now, without a doubt, there's going to be some criticisms, but there's a lot about this film that I do thoroughly enjoy. Once again, you have Chris Hemsworth coming back to play the titular character of Thor. You have Tom Hiddleston once again playing Loki, who would continue to go on to be one of probably the best villains and best characters in the MCU, and I really love some moments of his in this movie. And then you have Natalie Portman coming back once again to play Jane Foster, and you know, I was always so bummed that they kind of wrote her character out, but I'm incredibly excited to know that she's coming back for Thor 4. I think it's called Love and Thunder. I'm super excited for that, and I've always wanted to see them take the Jane Foster character and turn her into the Thor character that we've seen her become in the comic books. And when they kind of moved on from her and kind of wrote her character off with kind of a jokey kind of line, I believe in Ragnarok, if I'm not mistaken, I was bummed by that because, number one, I love Natalie Portman. She's one of my favorite actresses, and if you guys have watched this channel for a while, you know, in my reviews for the Star Wars prequels, I talked about how I love Natalie Portman. She was one of my first crushes of all time, and I've just gone on to really love her as an actress outside of the Star Wars films, V for Vendetta, or even more recent films like Annihilation or Black Swan. She's a fantastic actress, and I think that she does a really good job in these Thor movies, and I think that she's kind of looked at as kind of one of the weaker elements, and I think it has more to do, for me, with the writing and what her character was given to do, rather than her performance itself. So at the beginning of this movie, we're introduced to this flashback that kind of shows us this battle between the Asgardians and the Dark Elves that are being led by this villain of the film played by Christopher Eccleston, who I loved as the Ninth Doctor in Doctor Who. And yeah, he's playing this character named Malekith. Now, when I heard he was going to be playing Malekith, I was super excited because I liked the character of Malekith from the comic books. But then when I saw what he looked like, I enjoy how he looks in this movie, but he definitely looks very different than what I was expecting him to look like. But I did really enjoy Christopher Eccleston as Malekith. Now, with that said, they really didn't give his character much to do. I think he looks great in the role, he sounds great in the role, and he's a pretty cool character when he's on screen. But he's given nothing to do other than just be the bad guy who wants to take things over, get the power of whatever, and take things over. That's essentially his character. He's kind of just a throwaway villain who gets defeated at the end of the film, and you really don't think much about him afterwards. So I think that was such a waste for me, and definitely probably one of my biggest negatives, is that you have an actor like Christopher Eccleston playing a really cool character like Malekith, and they really just underutilized him and made him probably one of the most generic and forgettable villains in all of the MCU. So like I mentioned, you have this battle going on, and it kind of just explains what's going on between the Dark Elves and the Asgardians. The Asgardians obviously end up winning, and the Dark Elves kind of have to go into hiding. You have Malekith, who goes into some sort of hibernation, and he's really just waiting for the power of the ether, which we would find out later on is actually one of the Infinity Stones, which obviously goes on to play a huge part in this franchise. So yeah, right out of the gate, you're kind of set up with the lore, kind of the setup for the story. And not too long into the film, you have Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, who is going on these awkward dates. You know, Thor's kind of left, you know, she doesn't really, you know how to date again. She's kind of awkward, which I always is kind of hilarious for such a beautiful woman. You know what I mean? Like, I've always just found that to be funny. But they kind of play her to be like the smart girl who doesn't really know how to handle or deal with dating and all that jazz. And yeah, not too long into the film, she ends up finding out that there's some weird anomaly of something going on in this one section, thanks to her assistant Kat Dennings, who also has an intern. That whole thing with Kat Dennings and her intern in this film, and Kat Dennings in general, that whole element for me is and that kind of leads into some of my negatives I have about the movie, is that there just seems to be a lot of characters and a lot of side characters that are there just for the jokes, and I feel like it takes away from the opportunities for this film to be a lot better than it really is. But yeah, Natalie Portman's character and Kat Dennings' character end up coming across this, you know, area where there's literally the ability to, like, they can like make a freaking truck float because the gravity in the area is kind of acting strange, and she ends up coming across this area where she actually goes into like some sort of portal. She comes across the ether, which ends up taking over her body, going into her body, the power of this Infinity Stone, and it's gonna kill her if they don't get it out of her body. Thor ends up showing up, taking her to Asgard, and then you have this adventure that ensues with Malekith trying to get the ether, and that's the basic gist of the story. And yeah, you know, I find this film to be a well-acted film that has a great use of practical effects and digital effects. It's well shot, it's fun to watch, it's got entertaining action sequences, but I think at the end of the day, the biggest negative that I think kind of leaves this film being one of the more forgettable films is just the fact that it doesn't really have too much meat on the bones as far as the story. The villain is very generic, and his quest is incredibly generic. So I think that alone leaves this movie to kind of just be one of the more forgettable ones. But that by no means means that this is a bad movie for me. I think sometimes when something is lesser in a big franchise like this, whether it's a book, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, if there's ever an episode or a movie or a book in a series that's lesser than the others, it's viewed sometimes as just straight out bad, and I think that that's not the case with this movie. Now, before I start getting into my biggest positives and a lot more of my thoughts on this movie, let's go ahead and hear what my buddy, the Big Rob Theory, had to say about this.
Yo. First, I want to say thank you, Anthony, for incorporating me in this review. I love the Marvel movies. Thor is definitely one of my favorite Marvel characters. I know that's kind of generic. I've really loved Thor and the concept of the God of Thunder ever since I was a kid. You know, there are a lot of Marvel characters, some very popular and some obscure that I really like, but Thor is definitely up there as one of the main ones that I really, really love. Just the whole lore and backstory and everything between him and Loki and the Asgardian history is awesome. So I will be presenting to you my review on Thor: The Dark World. So back in 2013 when I first saw this movie, I didn't hate it, but I was not the biggest fan of it by any means. It was easily my least favorite Marvel movie aside from Captain America, the first Avenger. But other than that, it was definitely down there. You know, I like the character of Thor. I like Loki. I like Odin the All-Father. You know, Frigga, his wife, Jane Foster, Darcy. All those characters. I love all those characters, but it's just for some reason I was very disconnected from it. And my main thing was that I personally felt like in this Thor movie there was no real development or growth from anyone really, from the first Thor movie and the Avengers movie to that movie. You know, I just personally felt like nothing really happened in that movie aside from obviously the plot line. But as far as character development and growth, I personally just did not think that it was that crazy, you know. However, I didn't hate it. You know, it's not like I'm like, oh, that movie's trash. Get it out of here. No. It just wasn't one of my favorite Marvel movies. I just recently rewatched it, and I'm glad to say that I kind of improved my opinion on it, you know. I still think it's not, you know, in the top tier of Marvel movies for me, but I definitely don't hate it as much as I did. Not that I hated it, but I finally really connected with the movie because I was just genuinely sitting down watching it and having an unbiased opinion, or trying my best to have the most unbiased opinion. And I will say the best scenes, in my opinion, included Thor and Loki, because the chemistry between both Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth is really, really good. But also, just how they went about doing things during this movie and what they went through, especially after their mom Frigga died. That was probably the biggest turning point in this movie specifically, because both Thor and Loki were out for blood after that, you know? So the basic plot of this movie is there is this entity called the Ether, and these beings called the Dark Elves kind of harness this power and get vicious and just ruthless, and it's a threat to all universes, or the nine realms, as the Allfather calls it. And the Asgardians have fought the Dark Elves before, so Odin did not really think, you know, anything of these elves during this time. So throughout the movie, the Ether is a big part of what transpires and how things transpire. And Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, plays a huge role as well. So yeah, this Ether being, or entity, or power, basically makes its way to Asgard, and as you can probably imagine, utter chaos ensues, and Thor and Loki have to find a way to not only take this away from Asgard, but save someone and make sure that the nine realms, especially Asgard, are preserved and protected. So the cinematography was astounding in this movie. I know a lot of it was CGI, as in Asgard. The Dark Elves' home world, which is the Dark World, and any kind of fight scenes with, including Thor's powers, Loki's powers, anybody from Asgard, really. Just the way how things were shot, the way how the music was incorporated into various shots was beautifully done. And I'm very surprised that when I first saw this, I didn't really notice things like that, but it's crazy how time changes. The main villain in this movie is played by none other than Christopher Eccleston, and his name is Malekith in the movie. He's like the main dark elf. He definitely did a great job as this villain, and I do like the Dark Elves as villains because, you know, it's something different, and I don't know, I like elves. But the main reason that I will still say that it is not one of my favorite Marvel movies, and it's still one of my least favorite, is because, again, the whole no growth aspect. And I get that throughout the movie, Thor and Loki kind of connect and have, you know, a similar mindset because of what happened on Asgard. But I still feel like their power, skill, and wisdom were lacking in development. And that could just be because, you know, it was could be a filler movie, even though it was a sequel. But that's just my personal opinion. Most people, whenever you see a sequel to a movie, especially from a superpowered being, you expect that the superpowered being, along with their allies or enemies or who have you, that they get stronger, they develop newer skills, something different happens, or they experience different situations that cause them to get stronger in that movie. Personally, that didn't really happen for me. Tell me if you disagree. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But I personally didn't feel like there was any kind of character growth. To be honest, the acting in this movie was really good. I don't really have any negative things to say about the acting in this movie. Typically, in Marvel movies, I've noticed the acting is pretty on point for the most part. But for this movie in particular, I will say that's one thing that I don't really have a negative about. I think personally all the actors and actresses did a really good job. Not my favorite Marvel movie, but also not the worst Marvel movie. Not a bad movie in general, to be honest. There was some good humor in it. The action was off the charts, as usual. And the characters were great. And again, just that aspect of not really gaining much substance in character and skill and power and progress, you know, that's just personally my thing. But again, it's not that big of a stipulation for the movie, you know. Would I watch it again? Yeah. Would I put it on myself? No. But, you know, I'd still watch it again if somebody else wanted to. Thank you again, Anthony, for having me be part of this review. I appreciate it, man. Always a pleasure being part of your collabs. Miss you, man. And you guys, thank you for checking out my review of this movie. Whether you agreed or disagreed, I'd love to know. I love connecting with people, so please comment down below what you thought. You know, just let me know in the comment if you're referencing something from my section or Anthony's, and just let me know what you thought. You know, I'd love to discuss with you guys. You know, what did you think about this movie? So thank you again for stopping by and watching this video and checking out Anthony and my point of view on this movie. Until next time.
As usual, a big thanks to the Big Rob Theory for being here in this video. Loved having you in this video, man. Really can't wait to do more collabs. If you guys have not already done so, you can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go subscribe, hit that like button on this video, go hit like buttons on all of his videos, go comment on his videos, go give him some love. He's got a great set of things going on over there, and yeah, he's going to be doing a really badass mini-series coming out very soon with Static Shock, so you guys definitely want to keep up to date with that. So go check out his channel, and yeah, thanks again for being in this video, man. So yeah, we've talked about the premise, we've talked about what I like and what I don't like, and one of my favorite things about this movie is the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and kind of the tension between Thor and Loki. Now, at the beginning of this movie, we're introduced to the fact that Loki has been imprisoned at Asgard, obviously after the events of the Avengers. And what I liked about this movie is it gives us a little bit more time with Thor and Loki. In the first Thor movie, you know, we already know right out of the gate that Loki is the jealous brother. We didn't really have enough time with them as brothers to see what it is that they love about each other, even though there is this animosity and this tension between them. And I think that this film and Ragnarok, I think Ragnarok obviously does it a lot better, but this film does a really good job of giving us a little bit of insight into this brother relationship. And one thing that I think is really cool is there's this sequence in the film where there's all these prisoners that are down there in Asgardian's prison who break out down in the dungeons, and they get out and they start causing havoc, and Loki's just kind of there, kind of enjoying it all. And in the madness, Thor and Loki's mom ends up getting killed. And one of my favorite moments in this film is when Thor goes down there to see him, and Loki's acting kind of cocky. He's just being his normal, over-the-top, very malicious sounding and feeling person. And, you know, and Thor's just kind of over it, you know, and he looks at him essentially and he's just like, dude, just drop the act, like, stop this shit. And then the whole illusion of what Loki actually wanted him to see, which was him acting cocky, just completely disappears, and we get to actually see the cell that Loki's in, and the room is just completely destroyed. There's furniture thrown everywhere, and he's sitting in the corner, disheveled, his hair looks a mess, and he looks like he's been crying, like he's broken. And I love moments like that because this movie, I think for me more than anything, is a movie of moments. And sure, that doesn't always make for the best film. I think on the outside it's a film that is fairly generic, and it's not one of the best ones in the franchise, but it has these moments like that that are able to humanize a character like Loki, who is such a fan favorite. And I think when I hear people say that this is such a terrible movie, I think that though it's not the best in the franchise, moments like this, and there's many others like this, especially moments between Thor and Loki, I think that moments like that definitely do a really good job of humanizing characters like Loki and making him a much more endearing character. You really do care for his character a lot more, and being able to kind of see him not be this malicious and evil character in this moment and realize that his mother is dead and it's broken him. I find that to be so well done. I really enjoy a lot of the moments with these characters in this movie, and I just thoroughly enjoy Thor, Loki, and I enjoy the adventure that these characters go on in this film. I think by the end of the movie, you just kind of look at it as like a very generic action comic book movie with a very generic villain, but it is a fun watch, and I think the moments between these characters that would go on to continue to expand their story in the other films, I think this is a fun chapter. It's kind of like, at this point, watching the MCU is kind of like watching a big movie TV show, essentially, and not every episode is going to be a huge banger, but I think you can have episodes like this that have really strong moments, and on the overall, it's just a little bit more generic. So, yeah, guys, that's going to be my thoughts on this movie. I think there's a lot about this film that's visually well done. There's so much about the performances and little moments between characters that I think were really well done, specifically the stuff between Thor and Loki, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with Jane Foster's character moving forward. Is it the best in the franchise? Not by a long shot, but I think it deserves a lot more love than it actually gets. So I'm definitely curious what you guys have to say. I'm sure plenty of you would disagree, and that is totally okay. If this movie's not your favorite, or if you don't even like it, I don't agree, but that's alright. So hit that like button down below if you guys enjoyed the video. Comment your thoughts. Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Do you also feel this movie gets mistreated a little bit? Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Comment your thoughts, like I said. Hit that subscribe button if you guys have not already done so. So much more content coming out very soon, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.